Today, we'll vote on whether to stop EPA from regulating toxic coal ash. On December 22, 2008, a coal ash impoundment in Kingston, Tennessee, burst, releasing 5.4 million cubic yards of toxic sludge, blanketing the Emery River and the surrounding land and creating a Superfund site that could cost up to $1.2 billion to clean up. Last year, EPA proposed regulations to ensure stronger oversight of coal ash impoundments in order to prevent disasters like the one in Kingston and to protect groundwater and drinking water from the threat of contamination. Today, we are voting to stop EPA from acting. The agency had proposed two alternatives for regulating coal combustion residuals. One proposal was to regulate these wastes under the Subtitle C of the Resources Conservation Recovery Act, or RCRA, as a hazardous waste. The other proposal was to regulate under Subtitle D of RCRA as a non-hazardous solid waste. Under both proposals, there would be a minimum federal standard developed to protect human health and the environment. Those standards would address wet impoundments like in Kingston and would also ensure that basic controls like the use of liners, groundwater monitoring, and dust control meet a minimum level of effectiveness. But the legislation that is being brought to the floor today blocks both of these EPA proposals. It replaces those proposals with an ineffective program that won't ensure the safe disposal of coal ash. At hearings in the Energy and Commerce Committee, we heard testimony about the devastating impacts contamination from coal combustion waste can cause. We learned of contaminated drinking water supplies, of ruined property values. We've learned about improper disposal of coal ash presenting catastrophic risks from rupture of containment structures and cause cancer and other illnesses from long-term exposure to leaking chemicals. But this legislation does not reflect what we learned about the dangers of improper disposal of coal ash. Under each of our environmental laws, until the Republicans repeal them, Congress has established a legal standard when delegating programs to the states. That was done, by the way, on bipartisan votes. These standards are the yardstick by which it is determined whether a state's effort measures up. They ensure a minimum level of effort and protection throughout the nation. This approach has worked well because it prevents a race to the bottom by the states. But this legislation does not include any legal standard at all to establish a minimum level of safety. As a result, the public can have little confidence that this legislation, if enacted, will result in increased safety. And to the extent new safety requirements are established, nearly all of them can be waived at a state's discretion. This legislation appears to create a new program for the safe disposal of coal ash, but the decisions of whether or not to provide a safe disposal, or whether or not to protect groundwater, or whether or not to protect against toxic dust blowing off disposal sites will remain state decisions. There will be no minimum federal health standard. The result will inevitably be uneven and inconsistent rules by the states. Some states will do a good job. Others will do a poor job. And when they do a poor job, the public will pay the price, just as they do today. If this legislation is adopted, no one should be fooled. This bill won't protect communities living near these waste disposal sites. It won't make high-risk impoundment of coal ash safe. It won't stop contamination of drinking water. And it won't create jobs. And in fact, it won't do much of anything. Like the cement and incinerator bills that the House has debated, this bill also violates the discretionary cut-go. CBO found the legislation would cost EPA $2 million over the next 5 years. This cost is not offset in the legislation. So once again, for the third time in 2 weeks, the Republicans are abandoning their discretionary cut-go rule. Mr. Chairman, this legislation is deficient in both process and substance and I urge all members to oppose it, and I reserve the balance of our time.